Well, we can speak now to the journalist and Middle East analyst, Nabila Ramdani. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nabila, tolerance and democratic process doesn't seem to be evident on the streets of Cairo this last 24 hours anyway.
Well, absolutely, and not least of all because a military coup was carried out against an elected president, and whatever your views on that president and his government, what happened was entirely undemocratic. And ever since then, he was deposed a month ago. You effectively have a permanent standoff between two historical rivals, the Muslim Brotherhood on the one hand, and their supporters who feel that they have been let down by the democratic process, and they're calling for the reinstatement of the president and an end to military rule. And on the other hand, the army, who is determined to pursue its crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood, to clear areas of protest, and is reluctant to hand over power to a civilian government. And if military force continues to remain the ultimate arbiter of which government is allowed to rule, then the killings will carry on unabated.
Is the army effectively running the country then?
Well, absolutely. I think it's fair to say that for anybody who spent some time in Egypt recently, and especially after the military coup was organized, can see that this is a government by strength and martial force rather than representative government. And even though the army has effectively manufactured an interim government, handpicking effectively members of an interim president and members of the government, the people who are calling the shots are very much the army and General Sisi in particular, who's not only defense minister but also chief of the army.
And obviously, the army taking a very hard line on the protest camps at the moment. Live ammunition being used. I mean, the scenes are scenes of extreme violence and demolition. Really, looking at the TV pictures. What next for the Brotherhood and for their supporters?
Well, you're quite right to highlight the use of extreme violence by the army, which is something that is not expected from any army in any country. In fact, the job of the army is primarily to protect civilian lives, and it's achieving the exact opposite at the moment, carrying out routine massacres using sinister tactics like live ammunitions, snipers, and even military bulldozers to clear areas of protest. The Muslim Brotherhood, on the other hand, feels very much persecuted and feels that it's a return to the bad old days where they were, pushed underground, but arrested and tortured and imprisoned by the Mubarak regime. And in fact, President Morsi has himself spent time in prison before under the Mubarak regime. It's very hard to see any hope for democracy in the short term while the army is in a position not just to eradicate the results of democratic elections, but also to carry out routine murders.
And it's very difficult, I suppose. We're hearing from our own correspondent in Cairo who says it's difficult to know the true extent of this violence, the most recent violence. We hear 270 odd people killed, according to government sources. The Muslim Brotherhood puts it at more like 2,000. Is it? I mean, I guess we sort of have to accept this in most conflicts like this. It's very hard to get to the truth of the situation.
Well, absolutely, and not least of all because the army is also not only persecuting Muslim Brotherhood demonstrators, but also very much targeting journalists who are brave enough to try to get to the bottom of what's going on the ground. And we've heard reports of a number of journalists being killed, but also arrested and their equipment smashed effectively. And for that reason, it's very hard to get figures. But the army downplays the number of casualties, no doubt, whereas the Muslim Brotherhood is also accused of pushing up the numbers. But what is certain is that the state of emergency will now give the police and indeed the army greater powers to arrest and detain citizens without a court order, and will no doubt also lead to the confiscation of fundamental rights like the right to protest.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us this morning. Nabila Ramdani there, the journalist and Middle East analyst. It's 10 to 8.
Let's have a look.